welcome to the October edition of Fintech Firebrand. I'm Virginie O'Shea, founder of Firebrand Research, and I'm here to chat to you about all this month's upcoming finreg and fintech developments and all of the news that's happened so far this month. Now, the month started off in an interesting manner with an outage of some of the social media giants out there, Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, with three of the services taken out at the start of the month, which is an interesting development when you think about all the discussions that have been going on within finreg land about operational resilience this year. Certainly it's not going to help matters. They're studying big tech in that regard as well. Certainly there's been a lot of discussion about cloud, as I've previously mentioned in previous episodes. So there's going to be a lot of investigation as to what happened there. And there'll definitely be some discussions and questions asked about whether certain things like that can happen due to systemic and concentration risk within other areas that big tech providers are supporting. So obviously Facebook is not something that would highly impact the capital markets, but certainly a lot of different financial institutions have flipped to using things like instant messaging around WhatsApp groups, for example, particularly in the fintech realm. So it'll be interesting to see how these developments, given that we're all sort of work from anywhere at the moment, will impact the market and the kind of discussions that this prompts. And another thing that's going on at the moment is obviously we're in the midst of the conference season. Now, it kicked off last month in September. I went to a fair few conferences during the month. Obviously virtually. Unfortunately, I didn't get to travel, but I was at InvestOps, which is an interesting conference talking about the buy sides. I think I mentioned that last month and rounded up some of the key discussion points that were in the conference. But also Post-Trade 360 in Copenhagen was interesting to see. A lot of faces in person there. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to Copenhagen, but I was projected on a big screen, so I could see everybody looking at me and they could see me looking at them, which was an interesting hybrid format. I wonder how that will evolve over time and whether we'll have VR sets and robots walking around for us to account for people not being able to get to a conference venue. It certainly makes it more globally accessible, which is an interesting perspective on the differences that have happened within the conference format going forward. But as I say, Sibos is one of the biggest conferences in the fintech landscape, and that's coming up this month. The theme this year is recharging global finance. There's a lot of different sessions relating to the changes that have been made with regards to working from anywhere or working remotely or supporting different types of flexible working formats. So I expect that to be a big discussion point across the various panels that are dedicated to talking about that topic. And I'm certainly excited to hear some insights about how various financial institutions have adapted and how fintechs have learned from what's been going on there. There's also a lot of focus, as you would expect, on the topic of diversity this year. Now, a few years ago, I was chairing a panel in one of the Boston Siboses about diversity, and it wasn't one of the main sessions, but now it seems to be a lot of the main sessions, main panels, big issue debates are centering on these topics. So that's very positive to see that discussion, all those discussions going on. So certainly will be interesting to see how we bring into the idea of designing gender intelligent fintechs is one of the topics, for example. So that's certainly a big topic. And that brings to mind a lot of the discussions that are going on within regulatory quarters at this point in time about AI, about data analytics, and about biases underlying some of the AI that's being built at the moment or coded. So I expect that to be a big topic during the various sessions there. We also have quite a few sessions. I've also chaired sessions on sustainability. That's again a big topic alongside the climate crisis and climate risk and how we as an industry tackle those various topics. So certainly those areas will be well covered during the building sustainable enterprises and understanding how to deal with the ESG data. I imagine will come up a fair amount during the week. Now, I'll be hosting a couple of sessions. One will be a Swift for Sibos session looking at the new capabilities that Swift are building around securities tracking across the transaction lifecycle based on the unique transaction ID and how we can bring more transparency into the middle and back office and make things much more efficient, given we've got CSDR coming into force next year and a potential move to a T+1 settlement cycle in the US. So certainly very top of mind topics on that that discussion point. And another area that I'll be covering is also cybersecurity and big game hunting, which is a very big topic, given we've had a lot of different cyber resilience incidents over the years. And certainly it's front of mind for most large financial institutions, market infrastructures out there, how they deal with the growing innovation of the cybersecurity and cyber criminal community. So I think that's going to be two topics to watch certainly during the week. Another huge topic in financial institution land this month is the release of the Pandora Papers and some of the biggest topics related to tax and tax avoidance. So from a wealth tech perspective, from a fintech perspective, imagine there's going to be a lot of discussion about these various revelations as part of the Pandora Papers. And much like with the Panama Papers a few years ago, we'll see a backlash against that. There'll be much more focus on tax regulation and tax disclosures and information from that perspective. So if you're in the fintech world or tax tech, I guess you would call it, certainly it could be your month coming up. Now, Gary Gensler is also doing his second testimony in front of the House Financial Services Committee this month. He's probably doing it right now as I'm speaking, in fact. But I had sight of his speech ahead of time, and there's a lot in there, believe me. One of the things he ends with is that the SEC is in desperate need of funding to be able to research all these different new areas that it has to cover. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of discussion about all the things I've listed before, but crypto assets, and he made reference to the fact that there's coordination going on between the CFTC, SEC, and some of the other regulators on that topic at the moment. Payment for order flow and everything that's come out of the GameStop discussions is another big topic that he'll be addressing to the House today. There's also a lot of discussion around securitized assets, Archegos, and the fallout from that. So we know that there's going to be more requirements for securities-based swap reporting next year. That comes into force as well. In Europe, we've got EMIR refit to look at on that front as well. So plenty of stuff around reg reporting. As I mentioned, Firebrand is doing a lot of research on that, so expect some insights coming out on the vendor community around that topic as well. And there's certainly a lot of discussion that's going to be going on in the House Financial Services Committee with Gary Gensler about sustainability and risk related to climate change. So all of the topics that I've been talking about forever again being covered today, and will likely result in some concrete, hopefully, papers coming out from the SEC. There's been a lot of work going on in the background, even if they are, as Gensler will end with, no doubt today, slightly short-staffed on previous years. Apparently there's been a 4% reduction in staff over the last 5 years at the SEC. So he's hoping that he can staff up again. And certainly there are a lot of adverts on the website. So it looks like they're particularly trying to understand lots of things around tech. So anyone in the fintech community that wants to become a regulator, certainly go look at the website. Certainly they're not the only regulator looking for people as well. ESMA in Europe is also looking, and the FCA as well. So there's plenty of opportunities if you're keen to get into the FinReg angle. Now, my final thoughts today are going to centre around a speech that was given earlier in the month by the FCA's Sheldon Mills about healthy cultures within the financial services industry. Now, this can equally be applied to fintechs as well, but he was talking about how the regulator assesses various firms on that point, and the things that they look for relate to various areas, but he broke it down to purpose, people, leadership, and governance. Obviously, governance, the G from ESG, is a big topic overall in the industry, as it goes anyway. And certainly all of these things do feed into the ESG agenda and transparency around that. So it was an interesting discussion that he had, an interesting speech, because he was talking about the fact that the regulator can't directly enforce healthy cultures on financial institutions, but they have to assess and understand where failings may lie and try to identify what impact that may have on misconduct at those various firms. Now, I think there's been some disagreement between the regulator and the industry about how far the regulation should be going. Obviously, the regulator's got things like the senior manager's certification regime to wield over the head of individual executives. And there's a lot of focus within the UK and beyond on accountability at the leadership level. But understanding a firm's purpose is somewhat, politically contentious. And this is another area where Gensler, I'm sure, will also be having some industry conversations with Wall Street firms in terms of how they meet the ESG criteria at an entity level as well. So certainly, particularly around topics like diversity and climate. So certainly there are challenges in a regulator stepping into this area, because it's an area that not every financial institution feels the regulator should be making judgments. But certainly I think that's the direction of travel for FinReg at the moment. Certainly big topics that Mills discussed were related to corporate inclusivity and diversity and inclusion. Certainly those are things that can be tracked and measured and are going to be built into certain aspects of industry metrics and regulatory metrics going forward. And the flexibility of working is another interesting topic. As I mentioned, it's going to be at Sibos. Has been a big topic over the last 24 months. But whether the industry keeps up this focus on flexible working is another matter. We've seen a lot of large financial institutions in particular calling people back to the office. So how long we last in terms of flexible working and the different approaches of each bank or each financial institution, each asset manager, each market infrastructure will inform a lot about their focus on things like disability and inclusion and things like that. So and families and flexible working and how the industry is going to evolve going forward. So I think culture is a very big topic, and it's something that we're just going to see more and more of. So certainly interested to hear your views, and drop me a line.